back to Ken Bostrom Ministries, Television Ministries. Thank you for being with us. We're on part 3 of Jerusalem. And so I've been talking about Jerusalem and the land. The covenant land, it was given to the covenant people. And there's a covenant over, Jerusalem belongs to God. It's his desire. It's where he chose it. And the Jews are actually supposed to take care of Jerusalem. They're supposed to live there. They're supposed to serve him there. And we went over last time about the covenant of the land. And here's how big the land was. Genesis 15:18. So the Lord made a covenant with Abram that day and said, I have given this land to your descendants, all the way from the border of Egypt to the great Euphrates River. And so that was land that was given by God. That doesn't belong to the Jews. It doesn't belong to Israel. It belongs to God. So when you try to divide Jerusalem, you're fighting with God. Ezekiel 5:5 says, God put, says the Lord Jehovah, this is Jerusalem, in the midst of the nation I have set her. Round about her are the lands. And if you remember, I pointed out right here would be where Israel was, and right here. So all the nations would, here we have Asia, Africa, Europe, and they all had to cross through Israel to get anywhere. And so God has made it's a covenant. So when you're working with Jerusalem, you're helping God. You're helping Him make that to be a city of peace until the Prince of Peace comes down and rules and reigns. And this is where empires end. World empires end. I told you the first about this great book. This is a Bible college course from LaCie. It's called Jerusalem Where Empires Die by Lester Sumrall. And I had the VHS videos on all of them. Of course, I don't have a VHS player anymore. So I gave them away to somebody who did have one. And so I didn't have anything to go with the workbook. And yesterday I just thought, when I was studying, I thought, I wonder if they ever put that on YouTube. And sure enough, I was able to go on YouTube and watch Lester Sumrall from way back then. He's teaching the whole thing in Israel, in Jerusalem, and this is copyright of 2000. It was reprinted in 2000. So I don't know when the first printing was, but Lester Sumrall has not been with us for quite a while. And so you can watch all of that teaching there. You don't have the book, but you can watch all his teachings on Jerusalem where empires die. And then he has a byline on that, will America die in Jerusalem? And so far, this president has been a blessing to Jerusalem, recognized it as Israel's capital. He's also moved the embassy and the consulate. The consulate just moved to Jerusalem with the embassy last week. Now they're working together, which means that the Palestinian Authority is not being based out of there anymore. And so that was a very good thing. Now, world empires end when they curse God's people. In Genesis 12:3, it says in 12:1, I'll start in 12:1. And the Lord said to Abram, get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land I will show you. To a land, remember that. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. That means I'm going to empower you to prosper. I will bless you. And I will make your name great. And you will be a blessing. And I will bless those that bless you. And I will curse them that curse you. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed. And now, when we think of cursing, we're I'm sure what comes to your mind is an R-rated movie. My husband and I will not see an R-rated movie because we don't want that foul language in our ears, because that cursing is was part of our vocabulary before we were born again. We were both bad at cursing, and that's swear words. Some of these bombs that people, say with their mouth, and they blink out, and they can't show that on television. But that's not the Hebrew way to talk about blessing and cursing. Bless means you are empowered to prosper. If you bless the Jewish people and the Jewish nation, you are empowered to prosper. I know churches, they come up to me and said, God showed me I need to start helping someone over in Israel. Who should I help? And I've been, Hope for Israel is a great place. If you want to sow seed and be a blessing, have your finances go over and give a little support to a ministry, Hope for Israel would be a great one. With and so, but the word curse there, it doesn't mean a swear word. It means I will make you smaller. So it's the opposite of making you, causing you to prosper. It says I'm going to cause you to be smaller. Now, there was empires that in the book of Daniel, you had the emperor's vision where he saw the head of gold, and the chest of silver, the thighs of brass, and the legs of iron. Those were empires. Those were going to be world empires, and then Daniel had a vision in 747 that showed how they were going to, what they were going to be like as far as an animal, kind of using an animal to describe the nature of that empire. Now, here's the Roman Empire up here. Look at how far it goes down into Egypt, all the way into Turkey, over all the way into Iran. This is the Babylonian Empire, and this was the greatest empire. Now, this was the golden image. This is the Babylonian Empire. This was the head. And when Daniel had the vision, he saw this empire as a lion, as like a king. So the gold would be the most prosperous of the empire, and the lion, it would be the king of all the animals. And so this was a Babylonian Empire. And guess what? After they destroyed Jerusalem, it's like God brought them there for a kiss of death. And the Babylonian Empire was no more. Remember when Daniel saw the writing on the wall, Mimi Tinkle, you were weighed in a balance and found wanting? Well, that's when the Medes and the Persians came in, and that started the Persian Empire. And this was the chest and arms were of silver. And silver is a less of in value, but still it was prosperous. And Solomon is a bear with 3 teeth. And a bear, one thing about a bear is they're fearless, and they're brutal, and they're savage with their strength that they can come down on. In the markets, I always used to wonder what it was a bull market and what was a bear market. A bear market would bring it down, and a bull market would, like with their horns, they'd lift it up. And the one thing about the bear, that they can take their one paw and kill you with that one paw. It's a savage. They're fearless and savage. And so Daniel saw this empire as a bear, fearless and savage. And then came the Greek Empire after that. Here, there's a change from the people of Asia to Europe, from Shem to Japheth people group. And so this is a Greek Empire. This is the brass waist and thighs. Daniel saw this empire as a leopard, swift and fury. And this is where Alexander the Great. Now, Alexander the Great, he absolutely went and, caused Greek to be the language, built the roads. He took over all these territories and everything. but then he died at 40 years old and with no children. So he actually left the his land. He left that to his 4 generals, and that's where the Roman Empire comes in at after that, because it's 2 legs, and it started being more divided. And Daniel saw this as a strange beast. He couldn't even put words into it, but the empire divided into 2 different empires, with Constantinople on the east and Rome in the west. And so it was this was when the Roman Empire started. And then you see a um, Muslim rule, and a British Empire after that. Here we have, these are some of that have ruled over Jerusalem, but never called it their capital. In 1831, Pasha Muhammad Ali of Egypt captured Jerusalem. In 1841, the Turkish rule was restored in Jerusalem. 1860, a foundation of the new city. 1892, Jerusalem received a railroad station linking it with the coast of Egypt. 1898, Theodore Herzl visited Jerusalem. 1917, the British Army under General Allenby conquered Jerusalem without a shot. Now, this is very interesting because the Muslims did rule all the way up to 1917, and that was in the Jubilee prophecies I referred to back in January and February. And so then in 1917, it was kind of interesting how General Allenby conquered the city without a shot, because this was the holy city. General Allenby was a God-fearing man, and God told him his assignment was to take Jerusalem. Well, he wasn't going to go in there and shoot and kill in the holy city, have blood and murder and stuff under his hands. And so he prayed and he asked God, and God gave him a scripture about dropping the word down from above. And they wrote pamphlets, everything handwritten back there and stuff, and they wrote, "Get out of Jerusalem, signed General Allenby." Well, when they dropped it in Arabic over Jerusalem, when they dropped those leaflets, what the Muslim people thought it said was, "Get out of Jerusalem, signed Allah," instead of Allenby. And so they left Jerusalem without a shot being fired there. So here we have, and that's when General Allenby, and so the British had Israel from 1917. There was a mandate that they kind of oversaw it up to 1948. And I'm going to go over this later too, but it probably won't be today. But the British people, the sun never set over the British Empire until they started working against God's plan for the Jews and their nation and coming back home, because they were supposed to be there to make Jerusalem a place for God's people to have a home. When I was studying this out, and they were having the Zion conferences and what to do with the Jews, during the Holocaust and stuff, and before they didn't want them killed, and they didn't have a homeland anymore, so they were going to make Galveston Island, Texas, where I lived for many years. They were going to make Galveston Island the new Israel, and bring all the Jews over here. So it was kind of exciting for me to find out that Galveston has been on God's heart for many different things, for protecting His people. But the British are the ones that started calling it Palestine. The British are the ones that stopped them from coming. The British were the ones that were murdering the Jews. They would put them in concentration camps. They would put them out in holding places. They wouldn't allow ships coming in. They pretty much were working with the Muslim people against the Jews. And from that point, they started losing their kingdom. Remember what I said, God will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. As long as England was a blessing to God's chosen people in his land, they were blessed. But when they started coming against God's plan, they started losing their land. And now, really, if you look at it, England is not doing good at all. And there's not much left of the United Kingdom, the UK. They don't own that. The sun does set on the British Empire, because it is no more. It's not a huge empire anymore like it used to be. From 1917 to 1948, this is the days of the British Mandate that we're talking about. 1920, the British High Commissioner in Jerusalem, and until 1948. 1925, opening of the Hebrew University. 1947, the United Nations recommended internationalization of Jerusalem under the terms of Statute of Jerusalem. 1948 to 1950, as soon as they became a nation, all the Arab nations around them decided they wanted to wipe them off the map. And so they were in conflict. They were in war immediately, that as soon as they became a nation, until 1950. 1956, this is the Sinai conflict with Egypt. 1967, this is they fought the Arab world in the 6-Day War, and this is when they got Jerusalem back. They got Jerusalem back in that 6-Day War. 1973 was the Yom Kippur War, when everybody was fasting and praying. It's the only day out of the whole year that all the Jews are commanded to fast. And then the nations went against them when they were at their weakest point. 2006, the War of Lebanon. And so here we have, it's been so much conflict in this city. Lester Sumrall, I just really love his heart and his teaching of this. He said, Jerusalem is a planet Earth's greatest suction power. It irresistibly pulls all empires into its bosom to give it the kiss of death. The kiss of death. It's the world's most hated city. Moscow is not the world's worst hated city. London's not the world's most hated city. Hong Kong's not the world's most hated city. But for nations that would hate a city, right now we're seeing the United Nations, Nikki Haley, UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, has been the greatest thing that has happened to Israel in the United Nations. She has fought tirelessly to bring forth truth and stand strong, that we are going to be a blessing with Israel. Now, she's resigned. I have no idea why she resigned, but I'm really praying that God brings up somebody in her with the same compassion, with the same courage to stand strong, that they don't bow or bend under the pressure of the UN, because the UN is anti-Israel. They really are. If you look at everything, they blame everything on Israel. And Jerusalem is the world's most hated city. How can I say that? Because there's never been so many things that have happened to a city like Jerusalem. No other city has endured the battles and devastation as Jerusalem. Jerusalem has been besieged 40 times, totally destroyed 4 times, and partially destroyed 35 times. Aliens, and when they were scattered, they really didn't have a home, because the nations would kick them out. I remember, the one I remember the most is when King Ferdinand and Queen Isabel had conquered the known world that they knew up to that time. And they wanted to do something else for Jesus. And so they decided that they were going to kick out all the Jews. So they gave the Jews a timeline. You can't take anything with you. You have to be out on a certain date, and or you will be murdered, or you're going to convert to Christianity. I mean, that's the way they treated him. And Columbus, who actually was a secret Jew, he in his memos in his diary, he has some symbolism in there that is Jewish, and it's only known to the Jews. And so he was actually a secret Jew, and in his notes he wrote, the last boatload of Jews are leaving Spain, and so that last boat was waiting for the tide to go out in 1492. And it happened to be on Tisha B'Av, on the same day that that the 12 spies came back and 10 of them gave the evil report. Same day that the temple was, first Solomon's temple was destroyed. Same day that in 70 AD that the second rebuilt temple under Herod was destroyed. And so they've been aliens in all nations. They're kicked out. They're persecuted. They have no rights. You know, so many of the Jews died, even on the ships that were leaving Spain, because the deckhands and the people on the boat, they thought, well, the Jews are so rich that they just swallowed all their money and swallowed all their jewels, and so they would cut the Jewish people open and see if they had any jewels inside of them. They were hated. Jewish people, even in Muslim countries right now, especially when in the West Bank and Judea and Samaria, and in Gaza, they're teaching little kids, little children, to kill the Jews. They're nothing but the pigs. They're nothing but monkeys. They're lower than animals, and that's what they're teaching them. And at the beginning of World War II, there were more than 17 million Jews, but under Hitler, 6 million were destroyed. I want to tell you something, because as we have done to Jerusalem, so it will be done to us. And Obadiah 1:15, for the day of the Lord is near to all nations. As you have done to the Jews, it'll be done to you. I want to tell you what happened with President Roosevelt, because it's very important that our nation be a blessing to Israel. So in 1938, this was before World War II, when all the Jews died. The Munich Conference of September 29th, 1938, was the idea of President Roosevelt. That was a conference that sparked World War II. He was well aware of what the Nazis were doing to the Jews. The nation cared little about what happened to the Jews, and none came to their aid. The hurricane was going to Florida, then turned on headed towards the Atlantic. But on the 29th, the same day as Hitler and the English Prime Minister Chamberlain and President Roosevelt were meeting, it headed straight for the U.S. East Coast, traveling at 70 miles per hour, which is normally 20 miles per hour. It hit with gusts of 186 miles per hour. The storm killed 700 people, 63,000 homeless, destroyed 9,000 buildings, destroyed the New England's fishing fleet. The hurricane was 400 miles in diameter, and the eye was 50 miles wide. Located in Yaftland, Long Island, was Camp Siegfried, the direct link to Hitler and the Nazis. Yachtplant has a major center for Nazi movement in the United States. The U.S. turned its back on the Jewish people, and an awesome tragedy struck, starting a pattern that continues to this day. We need to really pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We need to pray that our nation will be a blessing to Israel and not a curse. You know, there's that promised special blessing to all those that will not divide the land. Here, I'm going to put this up here. Obadiah 1:15, for the day of the Lord is near to all nations. And that was written back then, couple thousand years ago. and it is for today. The day of the Lord is near at hand. But as you have done to the Jews, it will be done to you. Your deeds will return upon your own hand. Roosevelt could have stopped the Holocaust. He could have stopped the Holocaust, but instead he sided with Hitler, came against Czechoslovakia, and what happened to our nation the same day? A hurricane that was way out. It came and just wiped out. It called the Long Island Express. They didn't have names for it back then, but it came like the Long Island Express because it was so strong, and just blew out everything in its way. 7,000 people died. Genesis 12, 2 through 3 was coming to pass for that, our nation back then. I will bless those who bless you. Were we trying to make the Jewish nation big? No, God was going to start working with the Jewish nation. The Balfour Declaration was already in place. And what did Roosevelt do? He treated the Jews with contempt. And he threw them under the Hitler bus. Zechariah 12:9. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all nations that come against Jerusalem. Zechariah 2:8. After a period of glory, the Lord of heaven armies sent me against the nations who plundered you. And he said, anyone who harms my most precious possession. He said, if you harm my most precious possession, I will come against you. And my last scripture is from Joel 3:1 through 2. At the time of these events, said the Lord, I will restore the prosperity of Judah and Jerusalem. I will gather the armies of the world into the valley of Jehoshaphat. And there I will judge for harming my people, for scattering my people among the nations, and for dividing my land. Pray that our nation does not press Israel to divide the land. God bless you. Have a day. Have a great day.